One coin struck the bottom of an empty hat, and Yi understood that his life had just taken an unexpected turn. Keeping his voice cold, he demanded $1 million in compensation. The other side protested that the sum was absurd. Even a low-tier, yellow-grade spirit weapon sold for only $200,000. He cut him off with a threat. This was a demand, not a negotiation. Cornered by his tone, the man agreed to pay, though he pleaded for time to gather the money. Another man snarled that since Yi's father had failed to discipline him, he would gladly do it himself. Later in the dim room, Yi silently weighed what to do next. He lifted his chin and gave the figure before him a fearless, mocking smile. A worried woman urged him to apologize before the quarrel went any further. He only reassured his father that he would take care of everything. His father shook his head gently and told him he was not to blame for any of this. Even so, Yi knew that without a spirit weapon, the dangers ahead might swallow him whole. His mother noticed the shadow in his expression and softly asked what he was hiding. Yi's eyes settled on the rare flower. How could an ordinary butcher possess something so precious? Unable to hold it in any longer, he confessed that something about him was terribly wrong. His mother stiffened and hesitantly asked whether he meant he had no interest in women. For a long heartbeat, Yi could only stare, horrified by the direction her thoughts had taken. His father stepped in at once, promising that no matter whom Yi loved, he would always be their son. His mother hurried to embrace him, her warm support making his embarrassment almost unbearable. At last he blurted out the truth. Whenever he looked at a living creature, he saw a pig. Even now, as he tried to explain, his own parents wore absurd pig-like faces in his eyes. He waved his hands desperately, insisting that this strange sight was the secret he had meant to reveal. To his astonishment, the confession did not frighten them. It made their faces shine with delight. His father exclaimed that had awakened a genuine combat profession after all. The old butcher straightened proudly and announced that he would now teach his son the essential strikes of the pig-slaughtering blade. Mastering those strikes, he promised, would help Yi survive whatever dangers lay beyond their door. Still troubled by the family's debt, Yi hesitated, but his father insisted that a son's life was worth more than any sum of money. With a massive blade in his grasp, the old man took his stance and prepared to demonstrate. He told Yi to watch closely, for he would teach him 3 decisive strikes. Spears of energy poured from the sky as he braced himself beneath the terrifying display. He raised his weapon overhead, instinctively trying to meet the incoming force. A fierce cry burst from his throat as the pressure bore down on him. Against the vast, darkened sky, he swung with all his strength. Mystic power flared around him, gathering at the edge of his blade. Then his eyes widened. The technique before him was far beyond anything he had imagined. His father calmly named the move, Falling Star. Power wrapped around Yi as he gathered himself to imitate the strike. His swing released a violent wave that made the air itself tremble. Under the pale moon, Yi plunged toward the earth, stubbornly refusing to yield. He could only stare when his father completed the feat with effortless, overwhelming precision. Crouching with the knife in hand, he realized the strike seemed to bend the world and fold his vision around its path. His father smiled and announced the 3rd strike. He drove forward, releasing another fierce burst of blade energy. Light erupted through the darkness, casting his concentrated expression into sharp relief. Half joking, he asked whether this knife art existed only to slaughter pigs, even mentioning from Journey to the West, but his father simply told him to learn it well because one day it would save his life. He reached for the weapon, determined to master whatever power it carried. His father passed him the blade, entrusting the worn but formidable weapon to his hands. The moment Yi took hold of the enormous knife, shock flickered across his face. Its weight dragged at his arms so brutally that he could barely lift it. He stared at the heavy blade, unable to believe his father had wielded it for years. Gritting his teeth, Yi forced the weapon upward inch by inch. The blade suddenly answered with a burst of power that threw him backward. He leapt up again with the knife in hand, while his father watched in stern silence. Lightning danced along the metal as he raised it once more. With a shout, he threw his whole body into the swing. Sweat streamed down his face, and a ragged laugh escaped him as the training pushed him beyond exhaustion. By the time the sun lowered behind the mountains, he finally earned a moment to breathe. Kneeling with the blade beside him, he steadied himself for whatever his father demanded next. Nearby, two men watched his struggle with cruel laughter and whispered contempt. The flash of a blade split the air, snapping Yi's senses awake. He retaliated with a brutal strike that tore the ground apart beneath him. Birds wheeled over the mist-covered mountains as his training continued without mercy. A sudden shout made Yi reach out instinctively. Though sweat gleamed across his brow, a stubborn smile tugged at his lips. At last his legs failed, and he crashed among the scattered debris. A glowing status screen appeared before him, revealing his new rank, improved attributes, and newly learned skills. In a sterile hospital room, only the faint glow of a monitor disturbed the silence. Yi lay unconscious beneath the sheets, drained by the punishment his body had endured. His mother rushed toward the doctor, fear written plainly across her face. The doctor assured her that Yi was safe. He had simply collapsed from complete exhaustion. Awake again, Yi recalled his father's merciless training and silently swore to repay him for it at home. A woman studied the data and marveled at the extraordinary improvement his body had made overnight. Her companion could scarcely believe that anyone could achieve such progress in a single night. The bespectacled woman, however, worried that such strain might have affected Yi's mind. Another young woman clenched her fist and threatened to beat his father until even his own mother failed to recognize him. An object suddenly flew across the room, and Yi reacted before he had time to think. Adjusting her glasses, the woman quietly noted how astonishing his stamina had become. Yi, meanwhile, wondered whether a private lesson that evening might push him even further. When the woman turned back to the bed, she froze. Yi was already gone. He was walking alone through the quiet street, his limbs still heavy from training. Then he remembered, today was the day he could collect his knife from Master Tai. A colossal weapon swept down above the rooftops, making Yi look up in alarm. Soon he stood before the entrance to the Iron Heart Foundry, wondering what sort of blade awaited him. A sudden clang made him turn sharply, hammer still in hand. A stranger called his name, and he stepped forward without hesitation. The boar-faced smith said Mr. had explained everything, and proudly revealed that he had forged the knife through the entire night. Yi eyed him dubiously, and asked whether a mere pig butcher could truly craft such a weapon. When the box opened, a cold gleam spilled out, and Yi was startled that the family had commissioned this blade. His hand hovered above the weapon, caught between eagerness and caution. The instant his fingers drew near, a charged aura stirred around the blade. With glowing red eyes, the smith began recounting the knife's origins and extraordinary quality. He reached for it slowly, sensing that this weapon carried more weight than steel alone. His hand closed firmly around the hilt, which shone faintly in the forge's low light. Sweat broke out across his face as an unexpected pressure surged through him. Weapon drawn, he faced the boar-like smith in a tense, silent standoff. To his surprise, this new blade felt feather-like compared with his father's monstrous cleaver. The smith's startled expression told Yi that something unusual had just occurred. Admiring the edge, he asked what the magnificent knife was called. He studied it for another moment, already imagining the name it deserved. The boar-faced smith suddenly unleashed a powerful blast of energy, catching Yi completely off guard. Then the smith scoffed, complaining that the whole scene had become unbearably. With a weapon finally at his side, he headed toward the city wall to begin hunting monsters. Before he could deal with, he knew he had to advance into the first-rank realm. Even so, he could not understand why so many strange beasts had begun attacking the area. He vividly remembered one plated ground ox that had chased him for 10 miserable miles. Rather than frighten him, the memory brought a wild grin to his face. Prey was exactly what he needed. He fired a bolt of spiritual energy into the dark forest and listened for movement. Stepping onto the grass, you let every sense sharpen for the hunt. A faint flicker among the trees drew him deeper inside, reminding him that perception grew with spiritual strength. In the silence beneath the tall branches, he paused to judge the dangers hidden ahead. A glowing blade appeared above him, hanging in the darkness like a warning. The luminous weapon thrust toward Yi, sudden and deadly. Through the trees, he caught sight of 3 figures retreating farther into the forest. 2 thugs blocked his path, jeering that he had been lucky to dodge and promising to drag him back if he ran. He tightened his grip on the butcher blade and calmly prepared to answer them. The weapon's ability fascinated him. Every kill could grant him free attribute points. Examining its enhanced stats, he realized the reward had become 3 times greater than before. Delighted, he raised the shining weapon and proclaimed it the Dragon Slayer blade. The dramatic name made even Yi pause and question his own choice. Still, his confidence returned as he rested the blade against his shoulder. One of the thugs burst into laughter, mocking his grand title and imagined heroism. Waving his own knife, the man sneered that he was hardly some legendary dragon slayer. Dark energy gathered around Yi as the humor vanished from his eyes. The thug grinned and stepped forward with his large knife, unaware that he had pushed too far. He merely laughed, unnerving the men who had expected fear. An instant later, one of them lay sprawled on the ground, and he stared as though even he had not expected the result. The remaining attacker froze in shock, then lashed out at his fallen companion in furious confusion. Before Yi could react, a darker presence rose from between the trees. He raised his sword at once, anger overcoming his initial surprise. One glance at the enemy's power was enough to tell him that he was hopelessly outmatched. Choosing life over pride, he turned and fled through the forest, trusting his speed above everything else. Even so, an unseen blow caught him and sent him staggering forward. He planted his feet and gripped the axe tightly, forcing himself to remain calm. A system message flashed before his eyes, listing the experience and bonuses he had earned. Turning back to the defeated man, he coldly reminded him that they had attacked first. Among the spoils, he found a strange object and examined it with growing curiosity. His expression brightened when he recognized the words written across it, "Skill Scroll." The small cylindrical scroll felt like an unexpected gift dropped straight into his hands. A luminous notice appeared, announcing that he had obtained the skill Shadow Ghost Step. He nearly laughed aloud with delight at the rare reward. New power stirred through his body as he reached toward the ground and steadied himself. Then a distant sound reached his ears, and his delight gave way to alert silence. Perched in a tree, he twisted aside just as a glowing projectile shot past him. Below, 2 figures toppled among the trees, and he watched with growing unease. A dark silhouette emerged above him, its presence pressing down like a weight. The monstrous shadow sprang at the fallen Yi with terrifying speed. As it broke from the darkness, he finally saw the creature's twisted form clearly. It pounced again, driven by a predator's single-minded hunger. He tightened his hold on the blade and vowed that this monster would not leave the forest alive. His body blurred into motion as Shadow Ghost Step carried him between the trees. He lunged out of the darkness, blade aimed directly at the creature. Facing it head-on, he gathered every ounce of focus for the killing blow. Then a sharp spike pierced his flesh, and pain shot through him like fire. If you'd like to see your favorite titles retold, leave a comment, and I'll be sure to pick some of them up from time to time. Also, let me know which video format you like more, long videos or short ones. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you again soon.